The Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 8 Ultra is one of those phones that becomes more impressive the longer you use it, even though it may not be the Samsung Foldable that gets the most attention this year. On paper, the Ultra has almost everything you could ask for: a huge 8-inch inner display, flagship level performance, a 5-camera system, better battery life, faster charging, and a much less noticeable display crease. Yet compared with the regular Galaxy Z Fold 8, I actually find the Ultra to be the less exciting device. Still, it remains my favorite overall foldable. Samsung's strategy this time around was not to completely redesign the Ultra, instead it took the previous generation and refined it. The phone is a little thinner, the inside display is flatter, the battery is much larger, the cameras are better, and charging is finally faster. It's also extremely expensive, but when you consider that you are getting a phone that can also transform into a tablet, the price is at least somewhat easier to justify. For me, the Galaxy Z Fold 8 Ultra remains one of those rare devices where the high price makes sense once you actually understand what it is capable of. This year, Samsung made an unusual decision with its flagship foldable lineup. Instead of having one clear flagship fold design, the company introduced two very different versions. The standard Galaxy Z Fold 8 gets an all-new wider body that is redesigned to make the phone more comfortable for content consumption. The Galaxy Z Fold 8 Ultra goes in the opposite direction. It keeps the familiar fold design that has always emphasized productivity, multitasking, and having a larger screen available whenever you need it. That creates an interesting problem for the Ultra. The phone carries Samsung's most premium fold branding, but it doesn't immediately look like a dramatic step forward. At first glance, it could almost be mistaken for the Galaxy Z Fold 7. There are plenty of improvements here, but most of them are refinements rather than major visual changes. And because the previous Fold was already one of my favorite phones of the year, I'm actually okay with that. Samsung didn't need to completely reinvent a formula that already worked. Instead, the company seems to have focused on fixing some of the smaller weaknesses and making the overall experience better. The Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 8 Ultra might be the most overlooked phone in Samsung's foldable lineup this year. It's an excellent device, but it arrived next to the new Galaxy Z Fold 8, which has a much more obvious visual identity. The standard Fold 8 takes the classic Samsung folding phone concept and gives it a wider, almost redesigned appearance that instantly makes it feel new. The Ultra, meanwhile, looks almost exactly like the previous Z Fold 7. That's not necessarily a negative. I really like the Galaxy Z Fold 7, and the basic design remains one of the most successful foldable formats on the market. But when two new phones launch together, the one with the new design will naturally get more attention. So rather than comparing the two constantly, I want to focus on what makes the Galaxy Z Fold 8 Ultra worth considering on its own. When folded, the Ultra looks like a fairly conventional smartphone, although its body is narrower than the Galaxy S26 Ultra. Then you open it with everything changes. The main screen expands into a massive 8-inch flexible AMOLED display, giving you the kind of usable screen real estate that a normal phone simply can't provide. And Samsung made a significant change to the structure underneath that screen. The new internal construction uses two titanium layers. One uses pure titanium with a perforated pattern designed to improve bending, while the second is a thinner titanium alloy that provides more strength and durability than the previous polymer-based material. The main benefit is immediately visible. The interior display now looks much flatter when it is opened, and the center crease is significantly less obvious. There is still a crease. It hasn't magically disappeared, but it has become much easier to ignore. Samsung is also promising that the improved structure will help maintaining the display over time instead of allowing the crease to become noticeably deeper as the device ages. The camera setup remains another major part of the Ultra experience. Samsung still gives you 5 cameras, including a 200 megapixel primary camera, That main sensor hasn't really changed, but the ultra-wide camera has been upgraded from 10 megapixel to 50 megapixel. The telephoto remains a 10 megapixel 3x optical zoom, and this is still the part of the camera system I wish Samsung had pushed further. A device with this much hardware and a price above $2000 deserves a stronger optical zoom option. I would have preferred a 5x lens, although even 4x would have been a meaningful improvement. Samsung can digitally zoom much further, but the further you push the digital zoom, the more you rely on AI and computational processing to construct the final image. Fortunately, the improved image processing helps keep the overall camera experience strong. The phone also gets Qualcomm's latest flagship processor along with a huge suite of AI features. Samsung has probably reached the point where there is almost too much AI on its phone, but several features stand out as genuinely useful. Photo Assist and Now Brief are two of the better examples. So, while the Ultra may not feel dramatically different at first glance, it is still an impressive successor to the Z Fold 7 and one of the strongest foldables available. The price was always going to be one of the biggest talking points. Samsung has increased the cost of the Galaxy Z Fold 8 Ultra as RAM and other components become more expensive. The phone starts at $2,099 in the US. In the United States, that represents a $100 increase over the previous generation. Considering the overall price of the phone, I expected a larger increase, so a $100 bump is not quite as bad as it could have been. The standard Galaxy Z Fold 8 launches at $1,899. That means you are paying an extra $200 to step up to the Ultra. There is no question that this is a premium price, but because the Galaxy Z Fold 8 Ultra effectively combines the functionality of a smartphone and a tablet, the value starts looking a little more reasonable when you compare it with buying both devices separately. You can get the Ultra in graphite, green shadow and violet shadow. The easiest way to describe the design is familiar but refined. The Galaxy Z Fold 8 Ultra is still 8.9mm thick when closed and weighs 7.58 ounces. Those measurements are basically unchanged from the previous model. The phone also retains its IP48 dust and water resistance rating. There is, however, one tiny thickness improvement. When opened completely flat, the Galaxy Z Fold 8 Ultra measures 4.1mm instead of the 4.2mm measurement of the Fold 7. It's not something you are likely to notice by looking at the phone, but technically it makes this Samsung's thinnest foldable yet. The more useful changes are found around the edges. Samsung has tapered them slightly, and that makes the phone easier to open because your fingers have a better place to grip. Under the flexible display is the new titanium alloy structure, which gives you panel extra rigidity while helping to make the center crease less prominent. And yes, you can still feel the crease. It is physically there, but the difference is that it no longer feels like a feature you constantly notice. The groove is subtle enough that after using the phone for a while, I barely paid attention to it. Samsung did not completely redesign the displays this year. The phone still uses a 6.5-inch AMOLED covered display and an 8-inch flexible AMOLED screen inside. The biggest change to the inner panel is the increased resolution. Both screens continues to run at up to 120Hz, giving you the smooth scrolling and animation experience you would expect from a flagship phone. Brightness has also increased from 2600 nits to 3000 nits. That extra brightness is particularly helpful outdoors, where reflective surfaces and strong sunlight can make large displays difficult to see. Samsung also added an anti-reflective coating to the internal display. That is a very welcome addition because the bigger the screen gets, the more annoying reflections become. The coating helps reduce glare and allows the main display to remain more readable. Other aspects are almost exactly what Fold users will remember. There is still a side-mounted fingerprint reader, a removable SIM tray, and the Mate Gorilla Glass Victus 2 bag. The biggest drawback with the internal screen is the lack of a built-in digitizer. Samsung removed the digitizer with the Z Fold 7, and even though there are suggestions that S Pen functionality might return this year, it didn't. Without that digitizing layer, you cannot use the specialized S Pen system that made drawing on previous Fold model more practical. Universal rubber-tipped styluses are available from third-party brands, but personally, I wouldn't feel comfortable putting one of the flexible screen without the proper S Pen hardware behind it. The camera system is one of the biggest differences between the Ultra and the standard Z Fold 8. Samsung gives the Ultra a 200MP main camera, a 10MP telephoto camera, and a new 50MP ultrawide camera. And for me, the telephoto camera is particularly important. Having actual 3x optical zoom gives you a major advantage over relying on digitally enhanced zoom. The Ultra also takes very good photos in a wide range of lighting conditions. During the day, the main camera captures plenty of detail, and in low light, Samsung's processing does a strong job of keeping images usable. Still, there is one area where I think Google has the slight advantage. I generally prefer the way Pixel phones handle photographs because they often look a little more natural and sometimes preserve slightly more fine detail. That doesn't make the Samsung camera bad, far from it. The new 50MP ultrawide is an especially useful upgrade and gives you more detailed results while capturing landscapes, wide architectural shots, and other large scenes. Here are some camera samples from the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 8 Ultra. On the software side, the Galaxy Z Fold 8 Ultra comes with Android 17 and One UI 9. This is still one of my favorite Android software combinations. One UI has grown into a mature interface that adds useful Samsung-specific functionality without completely overwhelming the underlying Android experience. Some Samsung apps still doesn't appeal to me, especially the Galaxy web browser, which I almost never use. But there are plenty of other features that I find genuinely useful. The phone essentially combines three AI ecosystems: Bixby, Galaxy AI, and Gemini. Bixby is probably the one I rely on the least, but its ability to control phone settings via voice can actually be convenient. For example, instead of manually opening the settings menu, I could simply ask Bixby to set the brightness to 100%. It would take care of the necessary settings itself. Galaxy AI offers much more. There are tools for recognizing what is happening on the screen, editing photos using voice commands, and providing personalized information through Samsung's Now Brief features. Now Brief gives you a condensed overview of relevant information and can now use custom cards. Now Nudge is designed to go one step further by looking at what you are doing and offering suggestions based on context. For example, it may recognize that you are multitasking or that something you are discussing could be turned into a calendar appointment. I did have some trouble getting Now Nudge to work inside RCS messages, so I suspect the feature may need more time to understand a person's habits before it can make useful suggestions consistently. Quick Share is another feature that deserves attention. Samsung's updates make it easier to share between Android phones and Apple devices, including iPhones and Macs. That sounds like a small improvement, but once you start using it, you realize how useful it actually is. Gemini is arguably the most impressive of the three AI platforms, especially when you allow it to access information from your personal apps. For example, I could ask Gemini, "Where am I going today?" and it would search through my email and calendar information and provide my schedule and the location of my next meeting. That level of context is genuinely useful. Circle to search is still here as well. Hold the virtual home button, circle something on the screen, and you can quickly search for it. The results are generally fast and accurate. You can also press and hold the power button to launch Gemini. Samsung includes 6 months of access to the more advanced Gemini Pro tier with the phone. Once that period is over, you still have the standard version of Google's AI, which remains pretty capable. Performance is exactly what I expected from Samsung's top-end foldable. The Galaxy Z Fold 8 Ultra uses a Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 for Galaxy processor, and you can configure it with up to 16 GB of RAM and 1 TB of storage. In practical use, the phone is extremely fast. It handles multiple apps at the same time, demanding games and heavily multitasking without showing any signs of struggling. There is much performance available that I actually wish more developers would take advantage of it. Take Pokemon Champions as an example. The mobile version is capped at 30 FPS, but hardware like this should be capable of significantly more. One thing worth mentioning though is that you don't need to buy the Ultra to get this level of speed. The standard Z Fold 8 uses the same processor and core specifications, so there is no meaningful performance penalty for choosing the cheaper model. Where the Ultra makes the bigger argument is productivity. The extra vertical space provided by the display format gives you more room to scroll through documents and websites, read text, and use two apps at the same time. Buttons and other interface elements are less likely to occupy important parts of the screen. The downside becomes obvious when you start watching video. The almost square internal screen is not an ideal shape for movies and TV shows. Most widescreen content produces large black bars above and below the picture, which means the giant display can actually feel underused for entertainment. Samsung made a much bigger battery change this generation. The Galaxy Z Fold 8 Ultra goes from 4400 mAh cell to 5000 mAh battery. That increase comes from the introduction of a new silicon carbon battery design. The real-world results are excellent. In our local video rundown test, the Ultra lasted 32 hours and 11 minutes when using the outer display. That is an extremely strong result and one of the longest endurance times we have seen from a phone. It comfortably beats the Galaxy Z Fold 7, which managed 26 hours and 22 minutes. It also outlasts the standard Galaxy Z Fold 8, which reached 28 hours and 14 minutes. So, if you are particularly concerned about battery life, the Ultra is the obvious model to choose. Samsung also improved charging speeds. You now get up to 45-watt wired charging and 25-watt wireless charging. That is a significant upgrade over the Z Fold 7, whose wired charging was limited to just 25 watt. The one thing Samsung still hasn't done is put a magnetic ring inside the phone. So if you want to use magnetic charging accessories, magnetic mounts, or other compatible products, you will need a case that adds the necessary magnets. Fortunately, Samsung's first-party cases include compatible options. The Galaxy Z Fold 8 Ultra is a better phone than the Z Fold 7 in almost every practical way, but it doesn't create the same sense of excitement that the previous model did. The biggest difference is that Samsung's upgrades feel evolutionary. The phone gets a stronger performance, brighter displays, better battery life, improved charging, a more capable ultra-wide camera, and a flatter internal screen. All of those are real improvements, but none of them fundamentally changes the experience. And that leads to my biggest criticism. The problem isn't really the Galaxy Z Fold 8 Ultra itself, the problem is the version of the Ultra that Samsung could have created. I would have loved to see the wider body from the standard Z Fold 8 combined with the Ultra's 3-camera system. Then I would take that design and increase the internal panel to something around 8.4 inches. That would give the phone even more vertical space for productivity while also making movies and televisions shows look considerably better on the huge screen. It would also make the Ultra feel much more clearly differentiated from the standard Fold. That, to me, is what Samsung should eventually aim for. The current Galaxy Z Fold 8 Ultra is still an excellent foldable and one of the most complete Android devices you can buy. But around $2,100, the improvements simply aren't large enough to justify an immediate upgrade for someone who already owns the previous Fold. And because the standard Galaxy Z Fold 8 starts at roughly $1,900 while using the same processor and offering similar performance, it presents a very compelling alternative. So, my recommendation is pretty straightforward. If you absolutely need serious side-by-side multitasking, want the taller traditional Fold display, or you really value having a dedicated optical zoom camera, the Ultra makes sense. For everyone else, the regular Galaxy Z Fold 8 remains the better pick for this generation.